Today we're testing the Specialized S-Works TT5 helmet, the first in a new generation of Aero helmets designed not just to allow better airflow over your head and down your back, but also around your shoulders. It's the helmet of current time trial world champion Remco Evenepoel, and there's been a lot of talk about this helmet, but very little independent data, so we decided to test it against one of the better helmets in the world. We expected it could be a blowout, but instead, we got an old-fashioned shootout. Here it is, the butt of many jokes and memes online. I guess not so much anymore now that we've seen the Giro, but yes, we have the Darth Vader or Judge Dredd helmet, whatever you want to call it, the Specialized S-Works TT5 on test today. Now, the question really, of course, is always, is it fast or is it fiction? It's from Specialized. They put out good product. I'm going to assume it's probably a pretty fast helmet, but the real question for me is it fast for time trialists, or is it fast for triathletes, or is it both? Time trialing and triathlon can be two very different things, especially when you talk about head position. World-class time trialists tend to have very low head positions. They do shorter events, they can keep their head low. They've got people spotting for them, so they don't necessarily even have to know where they're going, although that hasn't always gone all that well lately. But still, they tend to keep their heads lower. Triathletes, on the other hand, tend to have, a higher head position. Some are a little bit higher and some are a lot a bit higher, right? So we decided to test this on 3 different athletes, one with a relatively high head position, one with more of a mid-head position, mid-low, and then another one with a very low head position for triathletes. And we decided to test all 3 of those and see what the results would be. And the results were very interesting. Now, if you believe everything you hear, this helmet was primarily designed around Remco Evenepoel, the current world time trial champion. And let me back up a little bit, because these companies that make these helmets, they're kind of pulled in 2 different directions. So many of them who sponsor world tour teams, those teams are demanding the most Aero helmet for their riders in their time trial positions. But the primary purchasers of these helmets are triathletes, they far outnumber time trialists in the world. So as a company, you're sort of, which do you go for? And you're trying to make everyone happy. And that is a very difficult thing to do, because we're talking about airflow, and your head position is going to change airflow over and around you quite a bit. So all of these companies have a very big challenge on their hands. Now, we decided to test primarily against the Kask Mistral helmet, because that helmet has been performing so very well over the last year or so with athletes who tested against other helmets. In fact, it seems to always win. It's a very good helmet. It fits on a lot of different people. It's just excellent. So, and it's also a time trial helmet. It's not specifically for triathlon. It is a time trial helmet designed for world tour class athletes. So I thought that would be a good helmet to test against. So we use that as our primary test helmet against the TT5, but also our athletes use their own helmets to test as well. And like I mentioned, we have 3 different athletes here who all have different head positions. So we're going to look at their results. And then we've had other athletes test this helmet as well over the past month or so. And so we can't give you those results because those results aren't ours to give, but I think giving you kind of a little peek into what happened for these athletes is fine, because it tells the story a little better, okay? So let's take a look at the results. Okay, so we have 3 of our primary test riders do this for us. We have Adam, we have Tony, and we have Brendan. Adam tends to have a more heads-up position, although we're working on improving that position even now. But his head position tends to be a little higher up. Tony is well known to any of you who have watched our videos, and he has a very good position, and he has a low head position, but I would consider it mid-low, because then you look at someone like Brendan, and he has a very low head position, which he's quite good at maintaining throughout his event, whether it be our half or full distance triathlons, which is not easy to do, and truthfully, no one can do it, for the entire event. But he's trained himself to hold that head, and his position allows him to hold that head a little better. So let's first take a look at Adam and the results he got. Adam's baseline helmet was the Specialized Evade 2. A very good Aero road helmet, not a full Aero helmet, but a very good Aero road helmet. And his drag number for that helmet ended up being 0.2465. Not bad, not great. That's just what our baseline number was. Then he tried the Specialized TT5 with the head sock. And not surprisingly, that significantly lowered his drag to 0.2340. That's a big drop in drag, and we would expect that drop in drag. When he tested with the head sock, it was very hot, by the way. He did not like it, but he did it. Then we took the head sock off, which is no easy feat, by the way. It's not Velcroed in. You literally have to cut it out. I don't know why you do that. Anyways, and then he went a little bit slower with a 0.2353 CDA, so a little higher drag without the head sock. But then he put the Kask Mistral on, and all of a sudden he went down to a 0.2296. That is a massive drop in drag from one helmet to the next. Now, what does that mean? Well, compared to the Evade 2, the TT5 with the head sock was a whopping, 5% or slightly above 5% better with a 12.4 watt savings. Without the head sock, it dropped down to 4.54%, still a healthy advantage, with an 11.1 watt savings. So a little over a watt savings with the head sock, and I've kind of seen 1 or 2 watts that the head sock is going to give you. Again, as a triathlete, that's going to mean nothing to you, but on a world tour level, those 1 or 2 watts can make a difference. So it did its job. It just don't expect that to be night and day. But then look at that Kask Mistral, and we've got a full 6.86% reduction in drag, and that meant 16.8 watts beyond the Evade 2. And of course, that is significantly faster than the TT5, even without the head sock. We're looking at 5.7 watts, so that's significant. So for Adam, the Mistral worked better, and he liked it better. He wasn't a big fan of the Specialized. He did not like the vision out of it, and that changes from athlete to athlete, and he found it incredibly hot. For him, it was really kind of a non-starter of a helmet, but he did love the Mistral. He loved the vision, he loved the feel of it and the cooling, and it's a lot lighter, which we'll get to in a moment. Tony has a mid to low head position. It's lower than most triathletes, but it's not ultra low. So I thought he would be excellent for this test. He started with his Rudy Project wing helmet that he's been using for, I think going on 3 years now. It's an excellent helmet for him. Then we switched over to the TT5, and last we put the Mistral on. So his wing got him a CDA of 0.2206. Then we did the TT5 without the head sock. Adam was the only one that tested with the head sock. It's been made illegal to use in time trials, and quite frankly, just too hot to use in triathlon, more than likely. But that Specialized TT5 did bring him down to a 0.2170 CDA, so not a massive drop in drag, but a drop in drag just the same. And then he put on the Kask Mistral, and that was a 0.2196 drag number. So the spread on these helmets just wasn't all that big. We've got, I think, a little over 4 watts between all 3 of them, but the TT5 was fastest on him. It was 4.1 watts, or 1.63% faster for him than his Rudy Project. And then the Kask Mistral, for all intents and purposes, shows 1.1 watt faster than the Rudy Project wing, but that's probably a virtual tie at that point. It's less than 0.5% difference. So, but yeah, all of 4 watts in between all 3 helmets. That's a pretty close test. And by the way, very similar to what Alex Dowsett came up with recently in his Aero testing. So yeah, not a big difference, but the TT5 was faster for Tony. Now, he didn't like the fit of it. Again, he normally wears a smaller helmet, so he just didn't like the fit of it. But otherwise, for him, that TT5 was a little faster. Next we come to Brendan, and Brendan does have a low head position for a triathlete. As I said, he's very good at keeping his head position pretty low throughout his event. So for him, he normally rides a Giro Arrowhead, the vented version, not the ultimate. So that was our baseline helmet for him. Then he tested the TT5, and lastly, the Mistral. So let's look at these results. The Arrowhead was a .2256 CDA, whereas the TT5 was a .2255. So they were basically tied, right? Those two helmets tied one another. But then he puts the Kask on, and lo and behold, man, a .2156. So a big drop in drag all of a sudden for him. And there's a story behind this, because while the Mistral certainly worked well for him, one of the reasons the TT5 might not have worked as well for him is because he has a relatively high hand position and a relatively low head position. That shield, which sticks way out in front of this helmet, so it sticks pretty far out in front, was actually, he couldn't get his head low enough because it would hit his forearms. And so you can see that on the video right here, where he couldn't drop his head as much with the TT5 as he could with the Mistral. So we see this big difference in drag. And let's take a look at what that means. So right, like like I said, the Arrowhead and the TT5, for all intents and purposes, were tied. Again, less than 0.5% difference and just under 1 watt difference. We could probably conduct that test five times and get 5 different results from that. So those two were tied. But then the Mistral at 4.43% reduction in drag with, basically 9 watts. That's massive, but again, has a lot to do with head position. And head position, I think, is really the story of this helmet. I've had other clients test this helmet, and again, I can't share that data with you, but one client who is a time trial specialist and has a very low head position, the TT5 worked very well on him, beating his baseline helmet and also the Kask Mistral. I had another client who's a triathlete who also has a good head position, and for him it wasn't as fast as his Kask helmet. So and others have tested similarly. We're getting a big mix, and I think it really all comes down to head position. And I do think this helmet was designed around a very low head position, like Remco Evenepoel, and I think if that's your head position, there's a good chance this helmet's going to work well for you. But for most people who are out there racing, that's not your head position, and it's certainly not a head position you're going to maintain for any real length of time. I don't think that's reasonable. A triathlete needs to see where they're going. They've got to keep their head up. They got to know where other athletes are around them, and they've got to know where the race course is, because no one's telling them where it's at. So what do I think about this helmet? Well, let me say this. This helmet sells for $375, and for that $375, US dollars, by the way, for that $375, you get the helmet, you get a dark shield as well as a clear shield, and you also get a really nice case. And considering the prices of some of these helmets, it's a pretty good deal. The Kask Mistral that we tested again, that helmet's been around a while, and it's still selling for $450 on Amazon. So, for $375, I first of all think that's not a bad price, and it's reasonable. On the other hand, if you're a triathlete, I don't think I would buy this helmet without knowing whether or not it worked for you, because I think there's a chance it could be very slow on you. And I think there's more of a chance that it could not work for you than there is that it could work for you. But the only way to know that is to test. So on the other hand, this Kask Mistral sort of ended up being a little bit of the star of the show, but it's been that way for a while now. It's just a really good helmet. And then you look at the Giro Arrowhead and the Rudy Project Wing, and those are still great helmets. They've been around, the Arrowhead's been around a good long time, but it's still a good helmet. It's a half step behind now. It doesn't really win any of our tests anymore, but it's always kind of right there. The Wing still does very well on specific athletes, and people love that helmet for the ease of use and comfort of it. But again, for you, what works? It's like anything Aero. It might be different for you. What worked for these guys might not work for you, but looking at these 3 different head positions, you should be able to kind of come to some conclusion that, yeah, that helmet might work for me, or no, that helmet probably doesn't work for me. I don't think it's winning any awards for comfort, although I've had a few people reach out to me and say they love it. More often than not, I hear people don't really like it, and they don't like the comfort or the heat. But again, these are triathletes, not time trialists, that are telling me that. But again, there's no consistency here. It's all over the board, and it's kind of what we're used to seeing from helmets anyways. What works for one person is not going to work for others. Your Aero may vary. That's the way it is. So I hope this is helpful to you, and I hope this helps you make decisions. We do have tests coming of the new Rudy Project Wing Dream helmet, which is somewhat similar to this TT5, but even a little more dramatic. And then of course we will have that new Giro Arrowhead 2 data coming for you at some point, but we're not going to tell you when. So yeah, hope this helped. Please let us know if you like the video. Give us a big thumbs up. We appreciate it. Feel free to leave comments. I try to get back to them as much as I can, but honestly, unfortunately, I don't always have a lot of time to do that, but I'm going to try to make more time to get back to your comments. Then I'll be gone for a little while out of town, and then the next test we are conducting right now is drafting, both 12 meter and 20 meter drafting. So we'll have those results for you soon. Until that time, hey, don't be a drag, get Aero, and we'll see you later.